Oh, and I usually like to let me test audio here. As always, let's see what we got. Oh, perfect. All right, so audio is good. Alrighty, guys, I'm here with another discussion, and in this discussion, we're exploring adoption. As you know, with MGTOW, we may not want to be married, or we may not even have the chance to possibly have kids naturally or anything like that. Um, but we want to. I want to explore. I don't want to say we. I want to explore adoption because I feel there's a need, even though we may not have our own children, if possible. I do think it is something. It's something good in terms of building up your community, making it stronger, and mentoring other children. There's many ways you can do that. You do not have to go for the adoption route. You can also do it through coaching, like I've done in the past. As some of you guys know, I was a football or high school football and high school track coach. I still have contacts with some of my athletes, and I still mentor them at least into their young adult lives in terms of some of the things that they want to talk to me about and direct them in certain ways. I have Topaz here. I was given her information by Ulysses, or Complex Design of the Black Brain Trust. Shout out to my brothers over there. And one thing that Ulysses told me, he was just like, listen, there's somebody named Topaz, and she's actually in, I think, social work, and she'll tell us a little bit more about herself right now. And we can find out more about our guest, because I'm still discovering things about our guest as well. So, Topaz, if you can, just give us a little bit of information about yourself.
Okay, so I'm actually in the field of psychology.
Oh,
So when I got my undergrad, I was working with children with autism and extreme behavioral disturbance for 5 years. I was certified in that before I got my license to practice counseling. And so at this point, and this is my real life career, right now, what I'm doing is intern supervision and also like consulting with companies for their employee trainings, as well as any LPC licensed people that are provisionally licensed would come to me for supervision before they are fully licensed. And so eventually I do want to be on the board for counselors in Texas. So, that's my background in my
now,
career.
like a high achieving goal, like, I mean, only the greatest, the few can reach that. How does that work?
Well,
Is
okay, so that particular goal isn't so much about achievement, but so much about wanting to and not getting bored with the mundane stuff like the statutes. And I just like being able to shape the field. I do think that there are some things in the field that I disagree with, and what better place to say something about it is if I'm on the board.
so, quick question, and this is not even our main questions.
Right, right.
I only have Topaz for an hour here, and I'm probably going to use like 30 minutes of that just asking tangential questions here. But what are the problems that you see in psychology right now?
Okay. Well, let me say this. So, if we don't get to everything in this session, I have no problem coming back. You are very polite. You're very, respectful. So, I mean, I'm actually going to sub to the channel after this. I know I'm not a man, so I can't be MGTOW or anything, but I like knowing things. So I would like to know more about what it actually is, because that's a part of why I'm in this field. Just knowing about different populations, anything that is a culture or a subculture, we have to be culturally competent. So yeah,
Yeah, good to know different demographics and
right,
understand the different cultural differences within those demographics as well, and how
right.
they're, a lot of this stuff is just Venn diagrams. They overlap so much.
Right. And I did want to say that I am glad that you asked me to come and speak to your channel about this topic, because part of my practice has been working with kids that have been in foster care placement. My practice is primarily adolescents and young adults is my best demographic that I work with. So, and I have a passion about parenting. I actually talk to people a lot about Black parenting styles and what would be best to raise the next generation. So I really do appreciate you giving me a chance to actually speak about some of the things that I've found out in the field. And so for your real question that you asked, because I didn't forget,
Yeah.
so what are the problems that I'm seeing in psychology, right? Well, I would say everything that I've seen that's been a problem, what the thing that it has in common is people not wanting to let go of the past. There are some things from the past that worked, and we can keep those because that's how traditions happen, you know. But if it's good, you need to be able to explain the point behind it, the reason for it to the younger generation, so that they're not just being compliant, so that they fully buy in, and then you don't have to keep watching them. So explaining that to people, they don't like that. They don't want to have to ever explain anything. Everybody's constantly looking for somebody to just do what they say, do blindly, and that's just not human nature.
Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of reminds me of like disciplining your child, you know, physical versus just talking to them real soft and gently. I mean, my family were Jamaican, so
Oh yeah.
ain't no talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, in the ADOS culture, there's no talking to kids either.
Right.
Kids should be seen and not heard. People will fight you tooth and nail for their right to spank. And I'm just trying to explain to people. But now, look, has that worked? Has it worked? It doesn't work. So why are we still doing it?
I would say yes, it does work, but I think it should stop at a certain age. Um,
Yeah. And here, well, when I say it doesn't work, what I truly mean is like it might stop the behavior in front of you, but once they're adults, they're still going to go back to that behavior because now nobody's going to spank them. Instead of actually talking to them about what the rule was and why, so that they understand it, then they will be willing to keep the rule when they're not in your presence.
so this is what I did even with my own nephew, because I raised my nephew I had him like for 4 years, and I raised him alongside my own mother. It's my sister's child. And with him, I said, you know, listen, after a while, we can't beat you anymore. And, you know, after a while, you're going to fight back, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, for you to feel it, I'm going to have to punch the living crap out of you. So I'm not going to do that because I love you, but I want you to understand the consequences. And one thing, we stopped like putting our hands on them and belting them and stuff like that at like 10, 11, because it
Yeah.
was like, you know, hey, listen, you know, but we always talked with him about it. But it
Right.
was just like, okay, there's consequences for your action, and this is what's going to happen, and so on and so forth. And you started to see it work, because one day he lied to me, and then he came back and cried his eyes out because he was like, I lied. And I was like, I know you lied.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard. He's just like, and I was just like, listen, you know, anything that you've ever thought of, I've already done. Like,
Right.
so stop it.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's like after a while, you also have to, especially in their younger adult lives, you just have to say, listen, life's going to have to teach you, not me. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was agreeing with you. And so it's like I don't just tell people not to spank their kids and then not give them an alternative. Like what I say is that the consequence for their actions should mirror real life consequences so that they get ready for what's going to happen as an adult. Like
Right.
you give them a piece of this is why I'm telling you. This is what society like. So all of our rules and laws and stuff is technically society has agreed that these things are bad and we don't want it in our community. Now, I know that there's like a lot more that goes into how these laws are made and everything, but the way I explain it to kids is, well, you can't steal from stores because we've all agreed as a society that we don't like that and it's not fair to people who work and purchase things or people who have a store and that's their livelihood. You're taking money from them. So then if they steal something, then I take something from them.
Yeah, and you know what? You don't get into complex systems and the nature of complex systems and how they
Right.
work, and you don't get into higher spiritual talking points like karma or
Yeah.
feeling bad about it or what have you. You just say, like, you show them the immediate consequences, right?
Right.
You touch the stove, you're going to get burned. But then
Right.
after a while, you start to explain why a burn is bad, not just for because of the feeling, but after a while, like if you have bad enough burn, it can get infected. You can actually lose a finger or arm or appendage, what have you, and possibly your life because of gangrene or other, other types of infections or something like that. So you don't really get that deep, but eventually you do. And it's like,
Yeah. As they get older.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even need to because it's just like, hey, listen, the pain was enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, like I feel like life is the best teacher. You know, that whole survival of the fittest. You know, like there's a lot of things that the people who would have had the biggest problem with what we're doing now have already died off. You
Yeah.
know, everybody else is just uncomfortable. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, drunk driving. It's like, hey, listen, one day you're going to get caught. I mean, it's not
exactly.
somebody else's life, hopefully not, but it might just be yours, and it's probably why
Yeah. Exactly. And if it's not yours and it's somebody else's life, now you're going to live with that. And that's not a fun thing to do. So I'm a big proponent of having my kids talk to somebody that's an adult that has gotten a DUI, or either that might have hurt somebody when they were driving drunk. Like, I would call on my neighbors, and say, hey, listen, can you talk to my child and tell them what it feels like? Because I want them to truly, like, everything that I tell my kids, I feel like my kids can't outthink me. If they can, otherwise, what have I been doing with my life? So
Yeah.
it should be no way that I can't convince them of what the rule was and why. Whatever I have to pull out, what I think outside of the box, whatever I have to pull out in order to get them to understand and buy into it for themselves. Because that's the actual eventual goal, unless you want to be one of those parents that is still raising your kid in their 40s. They're still living at home.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of like the one of the things you want to do is say, okay, was it, when they do it and they go off and do it anyway, you just have to ask, was it worth it? And then like sometimes that's the way that you get them to buy back into what you're saying. I used to have to do this with my nephew, and I'd be like, listen, was it worth it? And he'd be like, no, Uncle Mike, it really wasn't. And I was like, okay, so are you gonna listen to me and like just take what I say, take it to heart, or just at least keep it in the back of your mind? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, Uncle Mike, it does make sense. Like, I understand. I was like, all right, cool. All right, now bring your ass. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's easier, and then like you're a good parent if you train your child such that you don't have a job anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, because after a while, along with just not just the material or financial or status, the social things that you pass down to them, but just also the actual social cues in terms of like how the mindset, how that works, and what you're supposed to do in these situations. I like to preach adaptability, especially when it comes to like my student athletes. I remember one student athlete, I used to tell him, I was like, listen, man, you got to take angles, man. Like, it's geometry. You go through the front, you go through the offensive line, and then after that, you got to change your angle. Last game of the season, I always say this, last game of the JV football season, this kid says, he goes, coach, them angles do work. And I'm like, listen, man, he got it. This is like, he got it. So it takes a while.
And that's the thing, is your kids are watching you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so initially they do just do what you say out of blind loyalty. But once they start questioning, that's your time now, so that you earn the trust that you got initially.
Right.
So yeah, it's gonna work. That's why. Do you think I'm just talking to you for my help? Yes, it works. Yes, I knew it was gonna work.
Right.
And then that you get more trust, and it just gets so much easier. So yeah.
All right, so I'll get into questions here. 16 minutes in, so I'm doing better than I thought, not 30.
Right.
One of the first questions I have is, what are your thoughts about single men adopting children, specifically boys? I know there's a lot to that, but just on surface level, and then go a little bit deeper if you can.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give like the generic first. My views on people adopting children is that we have a lot of children in the system, and that I'm not just only talking about Black people, but if I was talking to Black people, because that's pretty much my channel is about Black mental health. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of kids that are in the system, and they do need parents for whatever reason, however they got there. They still are, they need that love in order to be able to recover, to bounce back, to be resilient. So I would think that single men adopting kids, it would be a good thing if it gets a kid into a family with love and somebody who's ready to be a parent. Being a parent is a job description. You have things that you're responsible for. You have duties and roles and responsibilities. So if you're ready for that and you can take that on, I would think that would be beneficial to the child.
Right. And I think that's important too. And sorry, I'm just doing some stuff here. I was listening, of course. But, a lot of people, I hear people think about or talk about, having 2-parent households. And I want that. But I also just can't deal with the BS. I've dealt with many women in terms of like ex-girlfriends and things like that. And I think some men, some MGTOWs are just like, hey, listen, I don't want to deal with it. But some MGTOWs also understand the power of community and passing information on and wanting to actually make changes and going beyond just, the self, not selfishness, but like just the self, and saying, hey, if I want to make this community better into the next generation, I need to pass this information down in some way, shape, or form. And I think adoption is one of the ways of doing that. Give me a moment. Let me let's get this link here. Information down in some. All right, cool. Wow, it's kind of crazy when you hear your own voice. It's just like,
yeah, I don't like the way my voice sounds on technology, but I say it and then I let the people hear the information. But if I could choose a voice, it would be Kelly Price, the singer. I would choose her voice. Yeah.
I never thought about that. I'd probably choose Sean Connery's James Bond.
See? Yeah, exactly.
James Bond. I just love James Bond.
I feel like I could do much more in life with that voice.
And then I think I always talk about, like, having multiple personalities. You have a personality for each one of your names. So you have, and then you have the overall personality where everybody sees. And my evil personality, the demon, if you will, is Omar. And it's like Omar would talk like Clint Eastwood, maybe, like, and Omar's the one that comes out in sports, that comes out in weightlifting, that comes out in football,
Wait a minute, you said you had not thought about this, and now you have this put together plan.
No, you made me think about like what voice, but I've always thought about the whole, having multiple personalities and that. You just you pull them out as needed,
Right. Technically, now in the field, when people have split like that and they have that diagnosis, that's pretty much what happens. Each one of the egos has a function. So
Really?
you're not that far off. There are some people that this happens to for real.
Now, do they know? I mean, you always hear about like I think it's is it Norman Bates, where he had all the different personalities. I don't know. I think it was based off a true story, but
there are people, I mean, I'm sure it was, depending on what happened to him in the movie, but there are people that this happens to in real life. So yeah, it is in fact a true story. And in the movie Sybil, so Sybil? You were gonna it's a movie called Sybil about a woman who had all of these personalities and ended up doing. I think she went to jail at one point. It was a lot. But so now, do they know when they switch, or do they know that there's more than one?
They know everybody's there, and then also are they cognizant of it when it happens? It's like, all right, cool, Omar, you take this.
Yeah, well, okay, so the switch happens because there's a trigger in the environment. So it's kind of automatic. It's not something that they can turn on or turn off.
Right.
So it whenever something in their environment triggers it, the other alter ego is coming out, and that's what's going to happen. So they can be cognizant of the fact that they have alter egos if they're shown the evidence when they're in the host ego, like the person
or something like that. It's like, hey, you act. I don't remember doing that, so on and so forth.
Right.
That's probably an interesting conversation that we need to have, other than this, like.
Yeah. So you know what? You think of any mental health topic questions, and then we'll do that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. You're keeping me on task here. Thank you. All right, so yeah, what are your thoughts on single men adopting children, specifically boys? And what even about adopting girls? I'm not okay with that personally, but maybe it's just like one of those situations where you have the boy and his sister, like you're going for the boy, but then his sister's there, and you don't want to break that up. What are your thoughts in that case of a single man doing that? What are challenges that may come from that as well?
Okay, so I'm in Texas, right? So here, children in CPS custody have certain rights and responsibilities. One of those rights is they have the right to be adopted with their siblings when possible, right? They only split the siblings up if it's just not a home available. Either like one of them has additional needs that the other one doesn't, or they have a relationship that's conflictual. It has to be a real reason. So that is a very real thing that could happen. If you're adopting a young boy, his sister might be part of that package. So I'm just going to say I don't have a problem with a young man adopting a daughter. And the reason for that is because a person that wants to be a parent is not looking to harm this child. Like all of the times that people say that they aren't okay with it, I've never heard anybody give a reason other than they're afraid that the father would hurt the daughter. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is a child that has been removed from a toxic situation. So we do need to be yeah, we need to be open to additional possibilities who could be there and helpful. And for some girls, that might be the thing that they needed. They might need a father figure. Secondly, they do vet the parents. So they're not going to be giving a daughter to anybody that has any criminal history of any abuse to a child. Like, that's one of the things that will completely disqualify you forever if you have anything on your background that has to do with injury to a child or harming them in any kind of way.
So that means
They're gonna be adopted by a man that actually cares about raising this daughter. So I don't actually have a problem with that.
okay. And then this goes in, well, before we, how do you think that affects development in terms of like actual single man doing it, in terms of like, adopting a child? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay, so the children, when they're being raised, the ideal home structure is going to include a mom and a dad figure so that they get the balance, right? They need to, each one of them is looking to the same gender parent as to what they are expected to be when they become an adult, and they're looking to the opposite gender parent to see what it is they're expected to interact with when they become an adult. So they need to see both of them. So in terms of single parenting, it's not the ideal structure, but if we're talking about kids in foster care, that ideal is gone. That's fairy tale is already over. There, we can't do that. But I do think that if a man is adopting children, he's probably not completely alone. Just because he's not dating or married or what have you, he probably still has sisters, cousins, friends, people in his life that can serve that function.
Yeah, and I thought about that too. I do have a sister that I'm not too close with anymore, but I do have my mom, and she might start living with me here a little bit, because I'm from South Florida and now I live in Southeast Georgia because it's cheaper. It's just cheaper. It's just really,
Florida is pretty expensive.
yeah, like, and I used to live down there in like Broward County and stuff like that, and it's ridiculous down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, making six figures and still living with your mom, and it's like, still hard.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Well, and that's a whole other topic too, because it's designed that way.
yeah, exactly. All right. So the next question is, and what you were saying leads into this next question is, what are some of the requirements and steps to prepare for the process as a person getting into it? And you can say it just for your state if you know just your state or whatever.
Right. And so for me, I am familiar with Texas laws and then some of the things that are federal. So, you can always look this up. Your state is going to have a website for people who are for people who are interested in adoption, and it's going to also have a website for like whatever here is called Child Protective Services. In other states is it has different titles. So that website for your state is also going to be a good place to start for information. But some of the requirements are going to be that you're able to show a stable income. They are going to have you do a psychological exam. And what that's doing is parenting is a very stressful job to do, right? It's when you're doing it correctly, when you're actually being an active parent, it has a lot of things that you are required to do actively. You have to be aware and grounded. So what they're trying to find out is there are a lot of people who are living a functional life, but when they get stressed out, they devolve. But they don't know that because they may not go into treatment because it hasn't impacted their life yet. They just have reduced all their stress. The thing about parenting is there's a lot of sudden things that happen. There's a lot of emergencies or urgent situations. And so you got to be able to be flexible and adapt. So that's pretty much what they're looking for, is people who are rigid and inflexible, people who might be emotionally unstable, people who are in toxic situations of their own. We can't bring the child into that. So basically making sure that you are presenting yourself as a stable person who is capable of being a parent, and then you have trainings that you go through too. So there'll be training.
The mom that gets called in the middle of the day and says, "You gonna have me come down here from work to deal with you?" Okay.
Because I mean, like, you're a parent. This is part of it. Like, tell your job that you have to go and take care of your kid because this is your child.
Okay.
So they do look more favorably on people who have a job that has some type of flexibility. Now, kids in the system have levels of care based on the things that they need, and basic means that they don't really have a whole lot of needs. You're not going to have a whole lot of appointments and specialists to see. All the way up to intensive plus, where this is a child that's probably medically fragile in addition to emotionally and behaviorally disturbed, possibly disabled, things like that. That's the highest level.
So is there like a form or a checkbox where you say, hey, listen, man, can I get a regular kid and no problem? It's like, how does this work?
Okay, so you have trainings that you go through that says the type of home, the levels that you can provide. So intensive and intensive plus, levels 4 and 5. This is mostly going to be facilities. You won't ever get a kid that needs all of that because no home can take care of that. If it was your biological kid that had those needs, they would be in an institution and you go visit them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. It's just that bad. Okay. In terms of like the quote unquote bad, but I understand.
Right. So homes are usually kids that are basic and moderate, levels 1 and 2. And so moderate would be like maybe they have to see a therapist, or maybe they might have asthma, something that is manageable and treatable.
Right.
So you're only going to get kids out of the basic level or that level that I just described. So you don't have to have the checkbox, but they do have trainings for you to go through where you learn about your child's symptoms. You learn about how to handle whatever type of trauma that they went through. You learn about child's rights because we have the Child's Bill of Rights here.
Okay.
And it's 25 things that they're entitled to in their childhood. And there's an act called the Normalcy Act that is based on making sure that these children have a normal childhood, as close to it as possible after whatever the trauma was that had them removed.
You know, it's kind of crazy because that makes me think, and I want to hear some of those things from the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the Child's Bill of Rights, if you can.
Yeah.
Name all.
I have the paper around here. I'll get it in 1 second. Well, actually, I'll get it right now, and then you finish your question.
Okay. Yeah. And that makes me think of, you know, all the things we go through as like, you know, in terms of parenting, and you know, there's a lot of things that are you don't even think about, you know, but then when you put them in a quote unquote system, or it's filtered through a system, a lot of these things are thought about and need to be handled. And like for you, it's just like, listen, if I had a kid and they had all these problems, I would just have to deal with it. Just give me a kid, let's go. But then, you know, it's a little bit different when it goes through a system, because it's like, you know, I guess the outcome or the goal that you want to achieve is a somewhat balanced, normal, tax-paying citizen at the end of the day that's not going to be out here, you know, doing wrong or being a quote unquote menace to society. So that's
okay. So there's an actual goal for kids that are in CPS custody. What we want is for their recovery, for them to be able to bounce back from the trauma. So we want to promote healing.
So what's recovery in a sense? Like, how is that gauged? Okay.
Okay, so it depends on so for example, if I have a child that went through physical abuse in their family of origin, right? Mm-hmm. Their recovery would be them being able to recognize the signs of their triggers to that trauma, right? Them being able to overcome and manage their symptoms. Some kids might have flashbacks. There are certain things that they avoid now. They have PTSD symptoms. Them being able to manage those symptoms and make peace with the event that happened as part of their past. Look at it as something they've overcome, not something that's determining their future. So a lot of people think that healing means that you're going to live a life that is similar to what you had before the trauma. And that's not possible. You're never going to be that person. Once the event happens, the previous person that had not experienced that essentially dies, you know, metaphorically speaking. So you can't get back to that. And to promote that as the end goal is not helpful to the client. You're sending them on a wild goose chase. So that's the actual goal for kids in custody. When they are adopted, we want them to be able to recover. We want an environment that promotes healing. That's why the placements are based on their levels of care of need.
Okay. And then if you can go into the like your top portions of that, or if the whole thing, if you can, of the Constitution.
Okay, so it's so it's 47 bullet points, but I think there's like around 20, mid 20 things that they are actually entitled to. So the parent, as well as everybody that's involved in the child's care, has to sign this and agree to it. So the they're divided up into sections, right? So the first part is child rights, and as a child or youth in foster care, I have the right to have to be told why am I in foster care, what will happen to me. So this is all under safety and care. So we can't just have a child that has been removed from their family of origin and they don't know why. We can't say, oh, you're a kid, you won't understand. I'll tell you when you're older. Because that has led to a lot of questions, and kids don't just accept that. They stop asking, but then they make up their own reason. And that could be way worse than what they actually went through. Plus, if we're telling them, we can give them a developmentally appropriate answer so that they don't still have that burning question, right? They have the right to be told the rules by a person at the place they're living. So if you bring them into your home, you can't have all of these rules that you make up on the fly because of your convenience. If you have house rules, you basically, what we're trying to do is get you to sit down with the child and explain to them what the rules are for your home. Like, you have a curfew. We clean up after ourselves. You know, you can't just like, I can't believe you didn't know that. You can't do that.
So you should be able to, I'm not a person that's good with lists. I've had this problem with like ex-girlfriends, and they'd be like, hey, what do you do this about? It's like, listen, I don't know. It like when it comes up, then I'll let you know. But so do you have to have these lists, or like?
Well, everybody has rules for children
over time.
Well, yeah, you can make them over time just as long as you explain them to the kid before they're required to follow them. Okay. You know, right. And anyway, I mean, you may not feel like you've put it in a list, but you do have expectations already that you know for a child that comes into your life. Yeah. You know, so you're not going to tolerate certain behaviors. All of the things that you already have learned through your nephew when he comes to your home, that could be your starting place for your rules for the child that you adopt. So you already know what you're going to allow kids to do. Do they have a curfew? Can they not go past a certain point in the neighborhood? You know, like, no listening to music at 10 o'clock at night. You know, you have these types of things. So it's already there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just kind of like, you know, the things that you won't tolerate. But the part that I was like, I was kind of on was just like, okay, so I have to have this beforehand. But you explain that, hey, listen, as long as you explain it to the child eventually and say, hey, listen, this is a new rule. I don't really like that. So at least, so that tells me that I have to, of course, be a better communicator and have to be like a person that's going to be patient as well. Like you should already be those things, right? But not every parent is.
Well, and here's the thing for parents that are adopting, you know, now, and I also don't want to focus on kids that are in, you know, CPS custody, because you could be adopting a child that was simply just, you know, given up at birth. You know, you may not get a child that's been traumatized. So these are just good things that it will be helpful. It basically, the reason why they're in here is because there's a whole lot of research on why these things are important and what they do for child development. So the bottom line to all of these things is, if you're doing these things, you're at least pouring into your child's appropriate development. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is a way to be actively involved in your child, you know, becoming a functioning member of society. Okay. So there's another section, and that's another thing, is that in terms of safety of care, they have the right to be free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation and harassment. So the next section is family and other contacts. They have the right to be able, so they have to have contact with people outside of the foster system. We can't keep them in a bubble. That's part of the Normalcy Act, is that they get to have a normal childhood as long as whatever it is age and developmentally appropriate for this child's level of maturity and understanding. So you know, you can't separate them from their peers. If they have a church or a religion that their family was practicing, they have to be able to still practice that. Or if they want to convert, it's their decision, because we can't take away their spirituality.
Right. So if you're Christian and, you know, the child is Muslim or something like that, you know, then you can't. All right, you can't.
Yeah, you either don't adopt that child, or either you are going to be very tolerant of their religion. So no extremists. You can't be a Christian extremist and then adopt a child and Muslim and then try to like make them convert.
Right. Yeah. It's like, so if you, I think the way I want to put it is like, don't adopt if you can't adapt. Oh yeah.
Right. Nice. That's actually, I may steal that, just so you know.
Listen, it's open source. Take it. I just need I'm just playing.
So they also have the right to have contact with their family of origin, unless there's a court order that says that this is not good for the child's development. So if you have somebody that's very, very abusive to this child, and that family member is now prohibited from contact, their rights have been terminated, they don't have contact with that child. But if you have a child whose family just, for some parents, their child ends up in the system because they weren't able to provide an adequate environment for the child, but they didn't hurt the child. Then they might still be able to have,
like, they weren't an adequate father or mother or something like that, or maybe they had to deal with addiction and stuff like that too.
Right.
And there's that process, because you could be a foster parent too, where you hold the child temporarily, yes. And they can also adopt that child and hold them permanently. But I guess there's still options for them to have contact with their former family.
Yeah, and then so like there are family members that weren't involved in the case. So like, let's say if the judgment was against mom, but grandmom or uncle wants to have contact with the child. You can't shut them out from people that you're causing another disruption.
Yeah, also another disconnect, because that goes back to normalcy a little bit, right?
Right.
And maintain normalcy. I do have something here from the chat. This takes up the whole screen, so let me just put my this is from The Passionate. This is an important topic. To win the future, we need the youth. I am exploring adoption for years, but the recent chaos halted progress. I was an orphan, and the supremacists got me at a young age. I'm sorry about that, man. Right. But The Passionate, or anybody else, if you have some questions, we do have a limited time with Ms. Topaz here. We're probably going to end this maybe at the 55 minute mark, just to give you more time to get to your next meeting or event.
Right. And we can always come back. If there's anything, like, leave a comment in after the video in the comment section if there's any questions, and we can do it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As long as you're up for it.
All right. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And then also you can answer if you like to, like, most definitely open, of course. All right. But yeah, I think that's a good point, The Passionate, because this is an important topic, because we talk so much about, and let me just go on this little spiel here, but we talk so much about community, and we talk so much about, going back and not wanting to go back. And, I've had videos, I've had personally a video where I said, F them kids. And that was mainly because a lot of people will make decisions in their child's life that says F them kids, and you don't even have to be in that child's life. Decisions were made before you even got to the child's life, if you were either dating a single mother or around somebody that, like a sibling or something like that, where they've done things to actually make obstacles for that child in the future. And it's just like, at some point you have to say, like, listen, I understand that, these kids need to be watched and all types of other stuff. But at some point you have to just say, if you're going to deal with a person, there's levels, and you have to stop, if you will, and just say, hey, listen, you know what? Those kids aren't as important as, myself or something else like that. But along with that, I think we should be able to still mentor kids in some way, shape, or form or fashion, meaning we should actually be doing things to help them out, either coaching. We don't have to be in their lives all the time or anything else like that. We don't have to be attached to the mother of the child, especially as a MGTOW or a single man. But we can do things to actually help the children in our community without having that super direct contact. And we can actually manage that to a certain extent. We always will have those contacts with the people that we may not want to be close to.
I've actually told people that like, I'm not asking you to do anything for the mother. I get it. There are some women who purposely made that choice, and it was selfish. Like, they truly put themselves, hey, Shirley, they put themselves as well as the child in a situation. And to me, like, when you mentioned that there are people who are purposely putting obstacles in the way of this child for the future, it's selfish, and technically it kind of lends toward abuse, or at the very least exploitation, because you're using the child as a pawn.
And sometimes they don't even know it or understand it, or they're so selfish or so self-absorbed that they don't even understand the ramifications of what they're doing. And sometimes as a man in that situation, I've even told this to some of my friends that are married and going through it. And I said, listen, bro, I know this is going to be hard, but for your wife to expect to respect you and the things that you do, you may have to withdraw some of those things. I know it's going to be hard, and you may not be able to walk that tightrope, and you may not be able to do it, and it's going to be detrimental. But she's got to understand what you provide, and you have to be resolute. You have to be strong and strong-willed, and be a rock in that sense, and say, hey, listen, if you want what I'm like, if you want what I provide, then you're going to have to, work with me to a certain extent. And, some people really do say F them kids with their decisions and their actions. Men and women. I'll be balanced about that.
Right.
Thing, the passionate said, the passionate does have an, I want to say she, but the passionate,
Right.
how easy is, or no, it's a black man actually, sorry. How easy is it for black men to adopt black youth? Do they try to prevent this for us?
Okay, so now it has to be a balance. They want to make sure they're trying to give the child everything that is going to lessen stress. So one of those topics is culture. So they want to initially try to match children with their culture of origin. But if that's not possible, then they will explore people outside of the child's culture, right?
I can't no white babies.
Well, then that's why you see a lot of black children in white adopted households, is because we don't have enough black people that are willing to adopt. And there's like advertisement, there is waivers, there's assistance to try to get that number to increase, because it is found to be statistically significant that the child being raised in the same culture of origin is a good thing. So no, they don't try to prevent that from you, and they actually try to promote it. The problem is you can't like say, oh well, since we don't have any black parents, we're just going to leave these black kids here, because the goal that is still, even if they're placed in a different culture, is still better than being in foster care custody.
Yeah, so, because at least they get that that balance and stability, if you will, or that good foundation that they can build on top of and go from there. So I understand that, because then it's just like, they have to go somewhere, like the system can't hold them for long. And then also this is not good for them to be in a system like this. So,
and they have support for you to expose the child to their culture. So, you're not going to be just left alone to do it. If you are adopting a child of a different culture, that's one of the things that in terms of case management, they will be able to help you do. Is they would find like support groups or places where you can take the child. They would probably assign them like a mentor or something that would come and get them and talk to them about things like that. So they don't just leave you hanging if you're adopting.
So they don't give like, a white parent some Kanye West tickets? Like,
no. No, but they would probably talk to them about like different events. So in Texas, we have a lot of festivals, there's always about food. So they probably would like have a support group where they go and they meet with other families of mixed cultures, and they, share ideas, they get together. Sometimes they even formulate their own little family. And so if your child is my culture and mine is yours, we can talk about different things that we need to know, or explanations and stuff like that. So they, we got to try to be creative. Whatever you can't put in the actual home, then use the communities to supplement.
Right. And the passionate says, that gives me much relief. I want to help prevent what happened to me. I am greatly appreciative. No one really talks about this. Yeah, and I thought this is something that that should be brought into the space. We have limited time, so I do want to move on to the next question here. What are the legal ramifications of this decision? I think about things like, we in MGTOW spaces and in the Black Manosphere, we talk so much about child support and all these other things that we would be on the hook for. What are the legal ramifications of adopting a child and it possibly going wrong? Besides, well, I'll keep that part open-ended. Go ahead.
Okay. So when you are taking custody of the child, you have several options that you can choose. You can do permanent conservator, where the state is still the legal guardian, but you are kind of like the physical guardian. You make the day-to-day decisions, but anything big, the state is still on the hook for.
Okay, so, and is that like health insurance wise?
Yeah, the child will still get state funded Medicaid, but like they also will get, there's other benefits too. So like the therapy and stuff like that, is anything that the child is going to need is still being paid for by the state. Okay. Some people like that option, but the parents who go for full adoption, they don't like the conservatorship because they want to be like completely free. You would still have a caseworker with the conservatorship because they're going to be checking in, making sure the placement still works. If you adopt the child and the adoption fails, which happens, then the child is brought back into the system. But this is the thing, is how did the adoption fail? Is it because now you were investigated and you harmed the child and the child was removed? Or did you say, okay, this child's behavior is out of my I can't do it right now. So the problem with that is that once you are the adoptive parent, it's like you're the biological parent legally. So we can't just drop our kids off at a fire station and say, hey, I'm done with this parenting thing.
Yeah.
No, you're going to be found guilty of neglect or abandonment.
Okay.
And that is the thing, is once you are the adoptive parent, this is permanent.
Yeah, this is your child. Right. And
so depending on what's wrong, like is the child acting out behaviorally or something, then if you're the adoptive parent, the adoption doesn't fail, you just get them the help that they need. And so you're going to already they give you resources to places for crisis situations. You're not going to be thrown out there as an adoptive parent without preparation. So if you have a child that's acting out, they might have to go to the behavioral health hospital. If you have a child that's doing something dangerous, they might have to go to juvenile detention.
It sounds a lot better than like regular parenting. Like, it's like everybody always says, hey, listen, there's no books on how to parent. And it's just like,
no. Well, we made some, but we got some manuals. We're working on it.
The state has manuals, constitutions, and all types of stuff.
There actually is a bit. It's called state. Well, what we have is statewide minimal standards for parenting. So it's kind of like best practices. So for other fields like engineering or psychology, they have best practices. These are the things that are shown to have worked. So we do have, like kind of like a best practices for parenting. It's just called statewide minimums. So therefore, you could start there.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know, because it's like, at least you have that groundwork that foundation put in place.
Right.
So then moving on to the next question, because like the legal ramifications is a big thing, because we as MGTOW, we like, again, the MGTOW comes from the MRA movement, so the men's rights activist movement, and that's kind of where it started. And we have those men had problems having rights to their own children, that they had rights right before the dissolution of the marriage or relationship, but now they don't have these things. And then also there's all the legal ramifications that we as MGTOW or as men and the divorced men had to deal with, where it's just like, now I can't see my kids, everything, I'm always seen as a criminal in the eyes of the law and stuff like that. So these are things that a lot of MGTOW men actually have to deal, or MRAs or divorced men had to deal with, that men that are going into being MGTOW and things like that. So that might be a good with what I just said, like if you can, but if you can actually talk to that on your channel, I think that would actually be good in terms of adding to the space along with this topic, because there are men that want to help, but they just don't want to help the, some people say the community. They don't want to help in a negative, or they don't want to help with, they don't want to help.
Well, it sounds like they don't want to reward bad behavior. The whole point of going your own way is because of the things that were not, acceptable. So why pour back into a community that's perpetuating that?
I'm trying to say it in a nice way, but they don't want to help enforce, or they don't want to help make, or strengthen the bullshit, is the best way I can say it. And I'm trying to find ways around it, but that's, so the Passionate says, MGTOW mostly contends with the legal system. Indeed. So the next question I have is, how can a single man be a benefit to the child's life? Is it better to have a mother figure as well? And we talked a little bit about the balance earlier, but it's not just about, us having a child and pouring into them, but like, how can we really benefit that child's life? And what are some of the ways that, single men can actually do things like that, from your style perspective? Okay,
well, we have to think about like the role of a father. What do men bring to the lives of children? There's discipline, there's structure, there's boundaries, there's protection. So you're doing all of the things that you would do for a child that was biologically yours. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's a benefit.
Right.
Now, in terms of, is it better to have a mother figure as well? I like that you wrote in here mother figure, because the point of it is to have somebody who's fulfilling that role, the traditionally nurturing role.
Right.
Right. So there's something that is just better when you're, in your mom's arms talking about it.
Right.
That's the whole point. That's why there needs to be balance. You'll get to see the
energy.
Exactly. So yeah, it is ideally, if we had to just, if it was a fairy tale ending, the child will be in the home of both biological parents, and that home would be harmonious. It would not be dysfunctional. So anything short of that is going to be something that's adapted. It's going to be something that has been patched up. So if you had to, right, if you're a single man and you're adopting a child, you can do the same thing. You could get a mentor that would be like a big in the big sister program for the mother figure. People at, like, I don't know how religious you are, but people at church, women at church love being in somebody's kid's life, you know. Like your aunts, your sisters, things like, they're going to still be able to see that this is what adult women look like, because that's the point, is for them to learn that.
Right. And so you're saying that it would be good, and we're coming up on the 55-minute mark here. You're saying that it would possibly be good to, you know, I'm somewhat of an introvert, but I get out there. I still get out there to a certain extent, because I used to have to do consulting and all types of other stuff and run businesses. I used to run a hair salon in Miami, and so you have to get out there. But it's just like, you're saying,
well, it's not mandatory. Let me say this: it's not mandatory. As an introvert, it's not that you would be a less, not as good of a parent unless you're extroverted. Now, here's the thing, because there are some introverted children. All right, so they're going to want to have a parent that understands that and doesn't push them and doesn't make them feel less than for not being extroverted. So now you don't get to choose your kid's personality, because if it was your biological kid, there's plenty of people that are extroverted to have kids that are introverted and vice versa. So it would be helpful for you to be able it would be helpful for you to be able to get out there, because that's where the resources are. That's what's going to make your life easier. It's not mandated that you have to be outgoing, but you have to leave your house sometimes so that you can get to the stuff that's going to make life easier for yourself as well as the kid.
Yeah, so, and going back to normalcy, going back to getting that child to be a little bit more socially active, or allowing them to adapt to their social environment, whether, local social environment, so on and so forth.
Well, to give them a sense of belonging, because the thing that has been damaged for them is relationship permanence, meaning they've had a lot of changes in caregivers. No caregiver is stable, right, in their life. They have to attach and then withdraw, attach, then withdraw. And it creates attachment problems, personality disorders. So when you put them into a neighborhood and you kind of guide them into being active in that neighborhood, they feel a sense of belonging, and it kind of reverses that problem that was created. Hey, Grinch.
So I think that's I'll end it with this, or end my portion with this, and I'll get your final thoughts. But, I think I've always, or not always, but in my adult life, I have come to really appreciate the stability that my parents provided me. Even recently, like, I just got my first home here at the age of 35 and moved out of mom's house and all that other stuff. But it's just like, like, a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people move around. Even when my parents got divorced back in 98, when I was about 14, 15, it's like, whoa. It's like the stability that my dad was still there over the phone every Friday, when, or in the weekends when I had to go over his home and everything else like that for visitation, so on and so forth. So like that stability is super important, and really kind of like, wow, that's crazy. So your final thoughts. I know you have to run, but yeah, your thoughts in terms of what about this discussion and anything else that you can give us.
Okay.
Information.
Okay. Well, so my final thoughts are that if you are mental and you're thinking about adopting a child, I would say go for it, right? But to prepare yourself, make sure you have things in place. If you could troubleshoot, right? Like, how before you start a certain project, you troubleshoot. You think of all the possible plans, the scenarios, any potential emergencies. If you get settled your life such that you have a contingency plan for all of these different types of things that can come up in parenting, then you'll be fine. These kids, all they care about is a loving home. I know your last question was, what's the kids' perspective? And to them, that's what it's like. These are kids that are going to have less trust in adults. So if you can, kind of like give them corrective experiences, be the adult that shows up, be the adult that has their life together. You're going to be modeling what it's like to be a well-rounded adult for this child. You're going to be their introduction into their life after whatever the trauma was. So as long as you're ready, they are going to be appreciative and grateful. Now, they're going to be struggling with some things. They're not going to trust it at first, but if you can ride out the roller coaster of adjustment, it is so many much more rewards that you would get. This is going to be a child that does love you. It's just in the beginning, they're trying to protect themselves. And I would accept that out of a child before I accept that out of an adult, especially a child that's been removed from their family of origin. Them, I can understand why they have trust concerns. I can understand why they're an emotional roller coaster. But an adult just doing this on their own, no.
Yeah.
So I know we don't like to deal with people who are kind of like all over the place, but at least we know why these children are that way. So if you can ride out that initial roller coaster, it's going to be rewarding.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's important, and providing that for the child. Topaz, thank you so much. I'm gonna get your. Can you actually shout out your channel name?
Yeah. Okay. So my channel is Topaz Presents a Neo-Nubian Nuances. And so on my channel, one of the things that I believe is that in Black culture, I mean, I know that we're disconnected from the African ancestors, and we don't fit in well with the American ancestors. So I feel like we can start from here in terms of ADOS and build our own value system and our own traditions. What do we want? We don't have to accept what we've been told about ourselves all this year. All these years. We can decide what we want Black culture to be like. As long as you speak up, you're reasonable, and everybody just kind of talks about it maturely.
Right.
So if you can do that, then we can create what we want Black culture to be going forward. The other cultures have branched off from other things before. This wouldn't be unheard of. So I feel like we can go from now and decide what we want to be.
Okay. So I linked your channel in the chat, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely subscribe to Topaz's channel, and also Topaz, more content. Let's go. Come on, let's go. More content.
I know. I have actually been trying to start I've been trying to start a different business, and then idea splintered off from that. So now it's like I got 3 projects going on, and so once I get all of these done in like the next couple of months, I'll be back on here. Yeah, I definitely have a bunch of topics that I want to approach.
Yeah, I'm talking trash, but I got to get back to creating more content on a regular basis as well. It is 1 p.m. Topaz does have engagement. So thank you so much for joining, and we definitely will do a follow-up. So thank you so much, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
All righty. All right, guys. Y'all have a nice one. Thank you guys so much for joining. We had a little bit of this. We had a little bit of time at Topaz, and sorry for the scheduling conflicts that I created on my side. And also, she's just a busy person as well. But I definitely wanted to do this discussion because I believe that there's some guys in the space that want to help and be a benefit to our community, but they don't want to help maybe be a part of some woman's life or something else like that. They want to kind of, in a sense, do it their own way, as if they had their own children. We fight so hard with others with our, with women over children, whether it be, a stepfather role or an actual father divorce role or something like that. There are a lot of kids out there that do need help and could actually benefit from our attention, period. So adoption is one that is somewhat on the extreme side. I will not lie about that. You don't need to do that. You can actually do things like what I used to do, which was coaching and mentoring. And some of my athletes I still talk to. In fact, one of my athletes just really hit me up the other day and told me like, hey, listen, she's pregnant. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy, And, but she wanted me to be a part of that because of, I guess, the what I represented in her life and what I quote unquote did for her in certain situations. The Passionate says, thanks, Grizzly, much appreciated. I don't want to see us so broken as a family. And this is true, sadly, sometimes it's just like that where, as a people, even that we have so many broken families, we have so many issues that we have to deal with on a regular basis. And, there's some things that we can't get past ourselves. And, there's a little bit more to it, or there should be more to it in terms of helping others out. Or even our situation, but we have to get past those things as best as possible and try and help wherever we can. That was a bit of word salad on that last one. I kind of lost myself on that one, but I hope you guys got it in terms of like what I was trying to convey and answer the Passion's question there or comment. But I think there's a lot that we can do in our community in so many different ways. And adoption is one way, mentorship is another way, and it's very easy if you don't want to be too connected. But understand that there are people that, young people, children, that once you are in their lives and you have that connection, it's going to be hard to disconnect. Hard for you and definitely hard for them. And you have to understand when you're getting into these things, consistency is very important. One thing that I pride myself on as a coach is like I'd be super tired and have little to no time before I had to go to my night job and do things in my day job. But I had to quit coaching because of things that were happening with my own life in terms of my hair salon not doing well and having being stressed out with that and going back and forth and doing a lot of stuff to make things happen, that I decided I had to quit coaching football and or cut down on coaching football and just do track, and then finally say, hey, I can't do track anymore, because the consistency was the most important thing to me in terms of like what I was trying to provide. And I wanted to make sure that if I was going to be a part of these kids' lives, these student athletes' lives, that I had to be consistent. And I think that's even more so like 10, 20, 100,000, infinite amount of times more important when you're thinking about things like adoption. It's not for everybody. In the words of a commenter on one of my earlier videos, not everybody can walk this tightrope. There's no net underneath it to catch you. And you definitely want to, you definitely want to be prepared for that, So like, as I said, my bars, hey, listen, I come up with this stuff like it's nothing, if don't adopt if you can't adapt. Oh man, that is so nice. That's a good one. But I think it's important that we do these things and we reach out to these kids in some way, shape, or form, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to interact with them at some point in your life. And are you willing to actually help build the community that you want to be a part of? And that's very important. All right, cool. So like a backup plan, I like that. Yeah, yeah. I guess you mean like a backup plan in terms of mentorship. Instead of adopting, you could do mentorship. There's that, and then there's also like what I said. Don't adopt if you can't adapt. You have to be able to adapt as well. So you definitely want to have some type of backup plan or some a way to think about things a little bit better. There is a little bit of delay from when like I say something and you guys say something, then you put it in the chat, then I finally see it. Because going through StreamYard. But yeah, guys, there's a lot to this, and hopefully I'll have another conversation with her, because there was a couple other things that were brought up in the conversation about just the psychology of this whole thing. And I think we're going to reach out to another brother in the space about social work and adoption and stuff like that. Mike V put me onto another brother in the space. I do not recall his name, but I'm going to try and reach out to him as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. And this has been another discussion with Young Grizzly. And, I don't have a tagline for this, but as always, if you're not taking what I say with a grain of salt, then you're low on sodium. Oh, and Char Willie, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, great show. I appreciate that, Char. I know you're doing like the BGS for women and everything else like that. Definitely go ahead and check out Char Willie's channel. She's been a woman in the space that has done great things in terms of supporting the space from being a moderator in the chat rooms and things like that, and always been also a good, not just a moderator, just a good, I guess it'd be a moderator too, but like the person that runs the debates, I guess they'd be the moderator as well. But yeah, she's always been somebody that's been a part of the space and done great things for the space. In a sense, in some cases from the chat, in some cases from behind the scenes, and really appreciate her and what she's done. Definitely a person that has tried to work that worked in the early days when I got into the space in 2017, when I got into the Black Manosphere space. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate you as well. Peace.